So we would just like to welcome you to the first ever virtual graduate student forum. Thank you to each of you that could make it today, our presenters, those of you that submitted proposals, proposal reviewers. We thank you for your dedication to ongoing professional development and participation in such an important organization for the field. We are especially honored today to have Dr. Deborah Short, the TESOL board president, with us this morning. She's going to give us some opening remarks.
Is that my cue?
That is your cue.
Imbote, Caribou, Yokoso, bienvenue, and welcome. I am Deborah Short, TESOL president this year. And I'm delighted to open TESOL's virtual graduate student forum. You know that 4 months ago, it was heartbreaking to make that difficult decision to cancel the Denver convention. And we hoped in our hearts that we could have a virtual event this summer. But I have to say, we were a little concerned that the time frame would be too short to make it happen, or that attendees might not come. I have to tell you, I am delighted that we worried in vain, because this event is the kickoff for the first ever virtual TESOL convention, which starts tomorrow. And it's really a treat to be with you this morning. Do you know there's almost 275 graduate students here, and you're representing over 20 institutions from around the world? This forum is a testament to the resiliency and the relevancy of our TESOL community. One of my goals as president this year is to ramp up research in TESOL, along with increasing member engagement and global advocacy. So can I thank you for helping me start down that path today with this forum? As graduate student researchers, you're setting a firm foundation for TESOL. Your research is valued, and it will be built upon in the years to come. Your energy is contagious, and it will lead our members and our students in the future. And your commitment to the profession is sincere. You'll serve our English learners and our fellow educators well. So let me thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge. And although we've had some severe financial setbacks due to COVID-19, I do want to announce that the Distinguished Research Award competition will open soon. So please be on the lookout for information, and perhaps, like Dr. Amanda Kibler, whom we'll hear from momentarily, you'll be the winner and you'll present at TESOL 2021. Thank you again for being here. Enjoy your day. And let me pass the mic back to Megan.
I'm muted, sorry. Thank you, Dr. Short. So now I'd like to introduce TESOL's 2020 Distinguished Award recipient, Dr. Amanda Kibler. We've asked her to open the day for us as our keynote speaker. Dr. Kibler is an associate professor at Oregon State University's College of Education. Her research focuses on understanding the interactional and ecological contexts through which multilingual children and adolescents from immigrant backgrounds develop language and literacy expertise over time and across varied settings. She holds master's degrees in teaching in English and ESL, as well as comparative and international education. She earned her PhD in educational linguistics from Stanford University. Dr. Kibler has published extensively in the field of English learner education, with almost 50 peer-reviewed publications appearing or in press in many of the top journals in the field. She's also served as a member of the TESOL International Organization's Research Committee and is a founding member of the Understanding Language Initiative at Stanford University. Currently, she's an associate editor of the Journal of Second Language Writing, and she received the 2018 Mid-Career Award in Second Language Educational Research from the American Educational Research Association's Second Language Research SIG. So thank you, Dr. Kibler, for speaking with us today. I'm now going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Megan. And Deborah, thank you so much for opening this event. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to take just a minute to figure out the sharing of my screen. So just a very brief technical interlude. so I can pull up my slides. All right, so hopefully this looks okay for you. Please chime in if you do see something going a bit awry, but you should be able to see my face and then my slides too. So today I'll be talking for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open up time for Q&A. So as you do think of questions, please do put them in the chat box, and then we'll also just have an open time for Q&A afterwards. But what I want to talk about today is just this idea of thinking better together and how to make the most of professional collaboration as a graduate student in TESOL, thinking about both the experience in graduate school and then how it feeds into the future. So when I think about collaboration, one of the ideas that comes to mind is interthinking. So Neil Mercer and colleagues have coined this term, and they describe it as how we use language for thinking together, for collectively making sense of experience and solving problems. And so that's really what when I think of collaboration, I think about it in that deep sense of how do you make sense of experience? How do you solve problems together? I think that when you consider how this kind of collaboration can work for you, there are lots of potential benefits. Solidarity and collegiality in working with others, especially for graduate students, this kind of collaboration can demystify milestones like comprehensive exams or a thesis. Those kinds of things become much clearer when you get to talk with others about that and work on things together. Even with peers in the same point in your program, you can guide and mentor each other. And it can also lead to improved teaching, which I'll talk about later. Both in teaching and in research, interthinking can really build towards conceptual clarity. So when you are having to explain an idea well enough for others to understand it, agree to it, and move together with it, you really have to sharpen that idea so that it is clear to all. Similarly, that can apply to methodology. When you are deciding how to study something, really coming together and making that decision as a group really does put it under the microscope, so to speak. Working with others who all come from different backgrounds and have different experiences can also help you question your assumptions, which invariably does lead to better scholarship and teaching. Working together also, quite obviously, when it works well, can lead to more productive and effective kinds of work that you do, and that you're able to divide something, you're able to tackle something perhaps quite large together. And of course, all of these things together can lead to greater confidence in yourself as a scholar and a teacher. I do mention potential benefits for a couple of reasons, because I do think there are some necessary strong foundations upon which to build your skyscraper of collaboration, so to speak. And it's not that all these things have to be in place all of the time to have a collaboration, but I do think that the stronger these aspects of your collaboration are, the more productive it will be. So things like having mutual trust and respect, being vulnerable and humble, being really curious about what others think, and likewise being open to feedback on your own ideas. Good communication is critical, and as well, having a critical sensitivity to the power dynamics and systemic inequities that may be present, not just in your larger institution, but that may even come into that will be part of your collaborative group by people's histories that they bring into a collaboration. So how do you really work to make it a genuine collaborative space? So with those more general kinds of ideas in place, I just wanted to reflect with you on a few examples from my own work in which I have found collaboration to be enriching and also critical to the success of what we've done and what I've been able to learn. So the first example, and I frame all of this in the terms of the benefits of similarity and difference, because I think no two colleagues coming together are exactly the same, but there are different elements of similarity and difference which become strengths. So this first example is a collaboration I have had with April Salerno and Elena Andre. Elena is on this call as well, so I wanted to recognize her. But April and Elena were former students of mine at the University of Virginia, and now we're all in different places. We have shared experiences, though, in teaching TESOL courses and a real interest in improving our teaching practices and a commitment to educators and to the students whom they serve. So we have a lot of similarity in terms of topic and discipline, and we are all qualitatively trained methodologists. So we have those similarities, but at the same time, because we are at different institutions, we have different perspectives on what does teacher education look like in different institutions, in different geographic contexts. And it also provides a space to have an outside listener. So someone who is not in your institution can often be just a really great ear and a really great sounding board for all kinds of ideas. And I also wanted to mention that April and Elena have their own peer collaboration, which they started from the beginning of graduate school, and that continues today, 10 years later. So that has been a multi-layered and multifaceted kind of collaboration that our group has had. To tell you a little bit about the work that we've been able to do by working together, we've worked on a series of projects focused on how to integrate discussions of translanguaging and hybrid language use into teacher education courses. So there's this broader issue we've grappled with about how do you talk about theoretical developments in TESOL in ways that teachers will embrace? So this question of how to acknowledge a unique audience of future and current teachers for these new ideas, because that audience is different from the audiences for whom those theoretical papers were actually written. So how do you present all the nuances and keep the integrity of a theory, but be able to really translate it into the kinds of ideas that teachers will understand and be able to apply and embrace? So the paper that you see on the right-hand side is a short report that we published in TESOL Journal recently that took discussion posts in April's class as she was working on integrating new theories about hybrid language use and really understanding what was at the core of teachers' understandings and misunderstandings as they were encountering new theories. And then on the left-hand side, you see just an excerpt of an assignment that was that's in one of the classes that April and Ella teach. And it is an assignment that we have adapted because based on a observation protocol I developed through research. And now we're trying to understand how teachers might be able to use an observational protocol to better understand their multilingual writers through assignments in a TESOL course. So through that, we've been able to tweak this existing assignment, enrich it with some research-based methodology, and now we're currently researching how teachers are embracing this, some of the challenges of trying to apply this methodology, and how we can develop it further. So this has really been a true sort of teaching and research collaborative partnership where we've really been able to really employ the similarities that we do have and bring our work together through our differences in institutions. So the next example I want to share is a separate study that began with a collaboration with Natalia Palacios, who is a colleague of mine at the University of Virginia. And we started this at the very beginning of our academic careers. And we both shared an interest in immigrant families. We came from very different disciplines, so we were both in a school of education, but she was a developmental psychologist, and I consider myself an applied linguist. And also we had very different methodological specializations. So I'm primarily a qualitative researcher and Natalia is a quantitative researcher. And we realized that this shared interest in a topic and diverse discipline and methodology could actually be a great asset. And it did work out that way. So you see the image at the middle of this screen is an image of one of the families you see on the far right is a mother, in the middle is a young preschool age child, and in the left you can barely see, she's almost cut off, is an older sister. And what we discovered, we had two phases to our study, and it really drew on our different methodologies. So in this first phase of the study was quantitative, and it involved surveys with parents and then assessments of children in the home. And what we were able to do through that first phase was to understand that older siblings had a really notable impact on the language and literacy use of preschool age children in bilingual immigrant homes. And what that allowed us to do was then focus our data analysis. We also did a qualitative observations and ethnographic observations in homes. We were able to focus that looking at family reading. So we chose not to just look at mother-child interactions around literacy. We realized from some of that quantitative data that the older siblings are part of the picture. And so we made sure to both in our data collection and in the analysis to allow this sort of naturalistic inclusion of older siblings and to understand that more deeply. And so through this collaboration, you see that I just listed one of our current publications that just came out that does have a focus on families and does have a focus on reading as a shared bilingual endeavor. And you'll notice we have since added additional collaborators. So things that start with one group, I have always found it useful to have a big tent and bringing in additional colleagues. So for example, Judy Pollock is another colleague at University of Virginia who's a specialist in teacher education and early literacy. So it was very helpful in understanding, in this case, decoding in the early reading development. And we also have Tatiana Hill, who's a graduate student, so showing the benefits of being able to collaborate with faculty and to really get inside the research process with them. I wanted to bring up one final example of collaboration and wanted to be sure to mention this one because this is the article for which my colleagues and I received the 2020 TESOL Distinguished Research Award. So this is just the bibliographic information for that. And you see my colleagues below, so both fellow faculty and students. So for this analysis, we were really interested in classroom communities and peers as part of the classroom community, but also the ways in which instruction is part of what brings everything together in a classroom and can really shape peer interactions. And so as you saw before with an interest in siblings, I'm really interested and have carried through an interest of how not just teachers work with students, but how students work with each other. How do students teach each other? And what are the kinds of contexts in which that can happen more productively or more easily? So a little bit about this project and how we made it work through collaboration. I think, again, that's really key. So as I mentioned, I was really interested in peers and in this idea of peer networks. So who is working with whom? How does it relate to language development? And this is a small and ongoing field in applied linguistics. I worked with a colleague also at the University of Virginia who had an interest in peer networks. Didn't really know a whole lot about TESOL at that point, but really, and she was also an expert in social network analysis, which is a quantitative, in this case, approach to looking at peers. And so what our collaboration was able to reach across some shared topic interest, different discipline, in that she primarily is a developmental psychologist, and a methodology with which I didn't know how to do. We were able to pull apart, again, a multi-phase kind of research project that really helped us come to new insights that we couldn't have come to by ourselves. So the image you see here, I just want to explain to tell you a little bit about what we learned. What we were able to do in a first survey stage of our study was we were able to conceptualize social networks in a slightly different way, in more of a language focused way than typically is done in social network analysis. So we looked at what we called language-based network integration. And you could have done this many ways. The way we chose to do it was by the bureaucratic English learner status, and looking at students who were both still bureaucratically classified as English learners and those who were not. So those could be both fluent bilingual students or monolingual English speaking students. And so you can see what we were able to do with social network analysis was compare different kinds of classrooms and understand how they were different. So we found classrooms that had low linguistic integration. So on the left-hand side, you see that box where each dot is a student, and each of the arrows is a reported connection. So someone's saying, either I'm friends with this other student, or I work closely, collaborate with this student in class. And we look particularly at academic collaboration. So when students said they worked with each other. In a low linguistic integration class, you see, if you say that the white dots are maybe the English learner classified students, and the black dots are the students who are non-ELs, you really see that this status is really creating two different groups of students who work together. There might be one student who's collaborating with another, but really they're only staying within their own groups in terms of the kinds of voluntary collaboration they might do in class. On the right-hand side, you see classrooms that are more highly linguistically integrated. And in this case, you see that students are working with each other, and that idea of an English learner status really isn't creating barriers or isn't really separating students. It's a really highly integrated and a low segregation kind of environment. So the quantitative work we were able to do helped us understand classrooms that were different in these ways. Another aspect that my colleague was able to help us with was understanding, are there demographic reasons for these kinds of networks? Could it be that it's just that the classes with lower linguistic integration have more English learners in them, or they have lower average proficiency, or they have speak more different languages? Is it grade level? Is it subject area? Is it mobility? We were able to check all of those things to really understand that those did not explain linguistic integration. And so then it pointed to ways in which qualitative methodologies could really help us understand these classrooms in more depth and nuance. And so we did use an observational protocol and an analysis of teachers' instructional practices to indeed find differences between the low linguistic integration and high linguistic integration classes, in that it was a teacher's instruction that did show us, there were some similarities, of course, but also there were unique practices in both the low and the high that again gives us this important empirical connection between the peer integration and what teachers do in classrooms. So again, this is something that we were able to come to, again, only by combining our expertise, combining our ideas, and really being able to focus on a big question in multiple ways that helped us come to these kinds of insights. So I wanted to share those concrete examples that both cover teaching and research to really show some of the ways that collaboration has helped me. So now to turn it back to you. So thinking about with whom you might collaborate. And I do think that there are a wealth of, as a graduate student, a wealth of people with whom you could collaborate, from classmates to fellow students, to recent graduates from your program who are often very interested in collaboration, junior and senior faculty at your current or previous institutions as well. And additionally, attendees at conference sessions who share an interest or a personal or professional connection, someone who knows you're interested in the same thing they are. These can be actually the beginnings of very fruitful collaborations. And I think there are so many things to collaborate on, and I'll just offer a few that came to my mind, and I know you'll have more. But if you share courses with someone, what kind of teacher inquiry could you do, or self-study that could both help your teaching and potentially lead to publications if that's something that you're interested in doing? If you have shared interests, things like curriculum development are great places to collaborate. Maybe a think piece or a conceptual piece. If you aren't collecting data, you could develop a study. So pilot studies or seed grants to support that work, or conference symposia where you do have your own data and you're able to collaborate with others to share it and to enter the scholarly conversations. And I think also there's wonderful collaboration opportunity when you're just a graduate student with someone else. So what are your reading groups and your writing groups where you can really build some of the support and the knowledge and reap some of those potential benefits? A really quick side note is there are things to set up ahead of time when you collaborate with others, especially if you're starting to collaborate in research. It really is beneficial to set out from the beginning what you anticipate the roles and responsibilities to do, your own needs and limitations, how you'll make decisions, how you will use data, and who can use it, and then how you'll negotiate authorship. So these are just some really important undergirding ideas to set out before you start, and to understand if you need to change it, to set out a process for how you might change it as you go. And I'll finally just leave you with this idea that we don't collaborate just to collaborate, but we collaborate because complex questions require lots of good minds. These questions you see off to the right are from the TESOL research agenda from 2014. And these are big questions. So about developing and responding to language learning and language use environments, about learning and teaching in community settings, and the relationship between societal change and language learning and teaching. We can't get to the answers to these questions by all working by ourselves. And I think that's an important call for collaboration and a way to energize our own research and our teaching. And so with that, I will thank you and wish you all good luck. And I will stop sharing my screen so that we can open it up for Q&A. All right, there we go. Oh, were you saying something, Rika? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Just saying any questions from the floor, and there's no need to be shy. And I know it's early for some, so. I don't see any questions.
There's also the benefit of you can chat straight to Rika and it can be an anonymous question if you do wish to ask those. So.
Yep, anyone can use the chat.
Hi, Rika, and hi, Amanda. Thank you very much for that. My name is George, and I'm in Saudi Arabia. I'm a graduate student doing my PhD currently. I think it was very inspiring what you just said. So I wanted to ask, do you have like a success story that you would like to share, like a collaboration that you did that really worked well, and what happened, and why was it so successful?
Sure, yeah, and I mean, I think that the three examples I presented are both ones that I would consider very successful on a lot of fronts. And a lot of it accrued when I was thinking about what the potential benefits of collaboration were. I really was thinking about, okay, what were the things I really took from my collaborations that were so successful? And so I think that, you know, I mean, on the one hand, they were all from a research perspective, we published papers from it, you know, and so that is, and we built knowledge, we contributed knowledge to the field through those collaborations. But I do think what made them strong are much more than that. It really, those are the people, like, I like those meetings. I look forward to meeting with Elena and April or with Natalia and Judy, and they are my true colleagues. So I think that it's really a multifaceted kind of thing. And I think we all have to think about what keeps us going, right? What are the things that we really find to be rewarding? And to me, I think those collaborations are far, I've done, you know, solo work too, but I think those collaborations are just more professionally rewarding. And I also have a lot of confidence in the validity, the trustworthiness of the findings, because they kind of have gone through the ringer. As a collaborative group, you really have to agree on what these pieces are. So you have to really, engage deeply with the ideas. So I think those have been my proudest collaborative moments.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was going to read a question from the chat. Someone asks, do you have tips for collaborating in research for online students who are working remotely and not on campus? And I think that's something we could all use some advice on moving forward.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, I mean, things like Zoom do make it far easier than it ever was before. You know, and I'll take an example. Actually, most of my collaborations with former colleagues of mine, because I've moved institutions in the last year, so a lot of my ongoing collaborations are remote. And I think that one aspect, a danger when you're not in the same physical place, is that it can seem less immediate. So I think that regular meetings that you don't miss and you don't cancel really keep you going. And even if your progress is very small each week, it's a very humble step, you're still taking steps forward. And I do think that, there is, in terms of doing that distance work, the ways we can share data now, there's not a whole lot of data collection is something that you'll probably need to negotiate carefully. But the processes of data analyses are really, really just about consistency in communication and pushing forward, because I think that's the challenge when you're distant.
So I'm seeing in the chat window that Julie from the University of Missouri, Kansas City has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
So at my university, the TESOL program is extremely small, and I'm really the only one currently researching our international students. I have a hard time with the university's IRB trying to simplify the consent form. And so I had students who had originally said they wanted to participate, but later misunderstood the consent form and backed out because they were afraid of their privacy. Like they specifically said, since you are using my real name, I can't participate, when actually the consent form says the opposite. The other thing with the IRB is to protect their privacy. They want to not include the country of origin, which in research I'm doing is very relevant. So how do you deal with consent forms, simplifying them for English language learners? Because there's all the legal things that the university has to include, and then the students, either they don't read it at all and just sign, or they don't understand it and won't participate. It's a huge roadblock.
Yeah, I think that every university's IRB's interpretation is a little different, and that's what makes this very complicated. I do find that when I work with the consent process, in whatever ways it's possible to have a face-to-face Q&A that goes along with the consent form, I have had similar kinds of things that people will read something and just, interpret it very differently. To the extent that your IRB allows you to rephrase things for students to ensure comprehension, I think that, or for participants, I think that that's a good case to try to make. So that to try to change some of the terminology in ways they still find acceptable, but that you can argue that I need to do this because I need people to understand the consent form. And then if there are other venues, multiple venues for them to ask questions, I find that is often useful. And again, I think with country of origin, I think sometimes we do have to educate our IRBs about and boards about what it is we do and why, and what are the important pieces of information. Why do we need to video record a classroom? If we're interested in studying language, why do we need that video? We can't assume that we have, we can assume we have good scholars on our IRB boards, but not that they understand the nuances of our field. So sometimes I think there's some education to do. Sometimes as a graduate student, you may not feel super comfortable being the one to do that. So it may be something where working with your advisor can be really helpful. Often, if you're a doctoral or a graduate student, your advisor has to be a PI on your study anyway, so they may be a good place and a good person to share that, to educate the IRB that way.
Shall we take one more question?
Sure.
Christina's question was next. She says, as a PhD student collaborating with a faculty member, she's been told that co-publications can often make it seem like the graduate student is just an assistant rather than a true collaborator. So any advice about making it clear that a true equal collaboration is really happening? Yeah.
I think that I think there may be a couple of different possibilities with this. One is that if you're if you're applying for a job, for example, I think this is probably the case where you are trying to really explain clearly in a cover letter exactly what your roles were on a publication. Even some CVs, you may want to add a note underneath each publication on your CV that outlines the roles you took. And being very concrete and specific is going to help. It will not be difficult if you were really a true collaborator in that. The other thing I would suggest is, finding ways and talking with a faculty member about, is there a little piece of this larger project I can break off and I can lead. And that I could be a first author, because I think there is, for those of you who are interested in competitive, that process of becoming an assistant professor and having becoming a university faculty member, having some first author publication can be helpful. And when you're doing it through a collaboration with a faculty member, there's tons of support, but you do have to sort of have that conversation with the faculty member of, is there something I might be able to take the lead on? And it could be a short report. It could be something, that is very modest, but could also show you taking a piece of leadership. If perhaps you're able to do that and maybe your dissertation data isn't ready, it's not published yet, you might have been able to work on something earlier with a faculty
member. Megan, Laura, should we take one more, or shall we go ahead and conclude the session?
I think because the next sessions start in 4 minutes, we might need to hear. Folks can get to their presentations, but thank you everyone for coming. Dr. Kibler, thank you so much for speaking with us today. And Megan or Rika, I don't know if you have more to say, but I think this is a great first start for the day.
Yes,
Thank you. And I put my email in the chat box in case anyone has individual follow-up questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Perfect. Dr. Kibler, everyone says thank you, and it was such a fantastic presentation. So
thank you, everyone.
Yes, everyone, thank you for participating. Please go ahead and move along to your sessions. If you need the link again to the conference schedule, feel free to email me and I'll send you the links. Otherwise, see you shortly in a few minutes. Thank you, Dr. Kibler. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.